"Don't follow your thoughts. They're lying," is a powerful and thought-provoking statement that challenges the common belief that our thoughts are always true or reliable. At first, it might sound strange. After all, our thoughts come from our own minds, so how can they lie to us? But when you look closer, it becomes clear that not every thought we have reflects reality. Our minds constantly generate stories, assumptions, fears, and judgments that can distort how we see the world and ourselves. This phrase is a reminder to question those thoughts rather than automatically believing or acting on them. Every person has an inner voice that never stops talking. It comments on everything we do, constantly forming opinions and predicting outcomes. Sometimes this voice is helpful. It helps us plan, remember, and learn. But often it becomes critical, fearful, or negative. Thoughts like, "I'm not good enough," "they must think I'm stupid," or "everything is going wrong" are common examples. These thoughts feel real in the moment, but they are not facts. They are mental reactions shaped by emotions, habits, and past experiences. When we follow such thoughts without questioning them, we can easily fall into anxiety, self-doubt, or sadness. The mind is an excellent storyteller, but not always a truthful one. It takes fragments of truth and fills in the blanks with assumptions. For instance, imagine you text a friend and they don't reply. Your mind might quickly say, "They're ignoring me," or "I must have done something wrong." In reality, they could just be busy or have a dead phone battery. Yet if you follow the first thought, you may start to feel rejected or upset for no reason. This shows how easily our thoughts can lead us astray. Psychology and mindfulness both emphasize the importance of observing thoughts instead of obeying them. In cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT for example, people learn to identify thinking errors like catastrophizing, overgeneralizing, or personalizing. These are patterns that twist our thinking and make problems seem worse than they are. Similarly, mindfulness teaches that thoughts are just mental events, not absolute truths. When you watch them come and go like clouds passing in the sky, you realize you don't have to follow everyone. Learning not to follow your thoughts doesn't mean ignoring them completely. Thoughts can provide useful information, but you must filter them through awareness and reason. The goal is to notice what your mind is saying, check whether it's based on evidence, and then choose how to respond. For example, if you think, "I'm going to fail this exam," instead of accepting that as truth, you can examine it. Have you studied enough? Is this fear a fact? By questioning the thought, you gain control over it instead of letting it control you. Our brains evolved to protect us from danger, which is why they often focus on the negative. This negativity bias means we remember criticism more than praise and expect problems more than success. While this helped our ancestors survive, it can make modern life stressful. When the mind constantly warns us of threats that don't exist, those thoughts become lies we tell ourselves. Believing them keeps us trapped in worry, even when we're safe. Not all thoughts are true. This simple statement carries deep meaning because it challenges one of the most basic assumptions we make about ourselves, that if a thought appears in our mind, it must mean something real. In truth, the human mind produces thousands of thoughts every day, most of them automatic and repetitive. They arise without our permission and often reflect our fears, worries, and insecurities more than objective reality. To live peacefully, it is essential to understand that our thoughts are not always facts. They are interpretations, guesses, and stories created by the brain. The mind is like a storyteller that never stops talking. It comments on everything we see, do, or experience. This inner voice sometimes helps us plan, solve problems, or make decisions. But just as often, it creates confusion and distress by forming conclusions that are not accurate. For example, if someone walks past you without saying hello, your mind might immediately say, "They're ignoring me," or "I must have done something wrong." That thought feels convincing in the moment, but it is only one possible explanation among many. Maybe the person was distracted or didn't notice you at all. The problem is that the mind rarely pauses to check the evidence. It jumps straight to emotional conclusions that can lead to unnecessary pain. Understanding that not all thoughts are true means learning to see them as mental events, not as reality. Just because you think, "Oh, I'm not good enough," does not mean you actually aren't. That thought might come from fear, comparison, or past criticism, but it does not describe your true worth. Our thoughts are heavily influenced by our mood, environment, and past experiences. When we are tired or anxious, the mind tends to produce more negative thoughts. When we are happy or relaxed, it often sees things more clearly. This shows that thoughts change depending on our state of mind, which means they cannot always be trusted as objective truth. Many people live as if every thought they have must be believed. This can lead to constant stress and self-doubt. The mind says you're going to fail, and instead of questioning it, we feel fear as if failure were guaranteed. The thought, nobody likes me, may appear after a small misunderstanding, and suddenly we feel lonely, even if it's not true. These examples show how thoughts can shape emotions and behavior even when they have no factual basis. By believing everything we think, we allow the mind to control us instead of using it wisely. To see through false thoughts, awareness is the key. When a thought arises, you can pause and ask yourself whether it is based on evidence or just emotion. You can also notice how it makes you feel. A thought that brings fear, anger, or hopelessness might not be a reflection of truth, but rather an echo of past pain. By observing a thought without reacting to it, you create space between yourself and the story your mind is telling. In that space, you gain clarity and the ability to choose your response instead of being driven by automatic thinking. It is also important to remember that thoughts are temporary. They come and go like clouds drifting across the sky. Some are bright and helpful, others are dark and confusing. But none of them define who you are. You are the awareness behind the thoughts, the one who can notice them, question them, and decide whether to believe them or let them pass. The moment you realize this, you are no longer trapped by the falsehoods your mind creates. The mind has a remarkable ability to create stories and meanings, but this same ability can also distort reality. Thoughts often exaggerate, assume, or invent details that are not actually there. When this happens, we begin to see the world not as it is, but as our mind imagines it to be. This distortion can affect how we feel, how we behave, and how we relate to others. The idea that the mind can twist reality reminds us to look at our thoughts carefully instead of accepting them as truth. Our brains are wired to make sense of everything that happens. They constantly interpret events, fill in missing information, and create explanations. This process helps us understand the world quickly, but it also opens the door to mistakes. For example, imagine you wave to a friend and they do not wave back. Instantly, your mind might say, "They are upset with me," or "They don't care about me anymore." That is one possible story, but it may be completely false. Your friend might simply not have seen you or could have been lost in thought. The mind jumps to conclusions because it prefers having an explanation, even a wrong one, rather than facing uncertainty. This tendency shows how easily thoughts can distort our understanding of reality. Emotions make these distortions even stronger. When we feel anxious, sad, or angry, the mind tends to create thoughts that match those emotions. If you are feeling insecure, your thoughts might tell you that everyone is judging you. If you are afraid, your mind might imagine the worst possible outcome in every situation. These thoughts feel convincing because they align with your current emotion, but that does not make them true. In this way, feelings can feed distorted thinking, and distorted thinking can deepen difficult emotions, creating a painful cycle that can be hard to escape. Another common form of distortion is personalization, the belief that everything that happens is somehow about you. If someone speaks in a harsh tone, you might assume you did something wrong, even if they are simply having a bad day. Overgeneralization is another example, where one negative event leads to broad conclusions like "nothing ever works out for me." These patterns make life feel heavier and more difficult than it really is. The truth is, our minds often paint with broad, emotional strokes instead of seeing the small and balanced details of reality. Learning to recognize these distortions takes awareness and patience. When a thought appears, instead of immediately believing it, try to step back and observe it as if it belonged to someone else. Ask yourself what evidence supports it and what evidence goes against it. Most of the time, you will find that your mind has made assumptions or left out important details. This small act of questioning can break the power of distorted thinking and bring your perspective closer to reality. It also helps to remember that thoughts are only one version of events, not the absolute truth. Two people can experience the same situation and think completely different things about it. This shows that thoughts are subjective interpretations shaped by personality, mood, and memory. Realizing this can make you more compassionate toward yourself and others because it reminds you that everyone sees through their own mental lens. When you stop automatically believing every thought, the world becomes clearer. You start to notice that many worries never come true, that people are not always judging you, and that situations are rarely as bad as they seem in your mind. By grounding yourself in present experience, what you can actually see, hear, and feel, you reconnect with what is real instead of what your thoughts imagine. The more you practice this awareness, the less control distorted thinking has over you. Observing thoughts instead of obeying them is one of the most powerful ways to find peace and clarity in life. Most people live as if every thought that appears in their mind must be believed or acted upon. When a thought says, "You're not good enough," they feel discouraged. When it says, "Something bad will happen," they feel afraid. But thoughts are not orders, they are mental events that come and go. Learning to observe them without reacting gives you freedom from unnecessary suffering. It allows you to respond to life calmly instead of being pulled in every direction by the stories in your mind. The human mind is active by nature. It constantly produces commentary, judgments, and predictions. This mental noise can make it hard to distinguish between useful thoughts and destructive ones. When we obey every thought automatically, we become trapped in endless mental reactions. For example, if someone criticizes you, your mind may immediately think, "I'm worthless." If you follow that thought, you might withdraw, feel hurt, or lose confidence. But if you pause and simply observe the thought, you may realize it is only a reaction to pain, not a reflection of truth. By observing it, you prevent it from controlling your behavior or emotions. Observing a thought means becoming aware of it without identifying with it. You can notice it the same way you notice a sound or a passing cloud. For instance, when the mind says, "I'm so anxious," you can acknowledge the thought calmly, saying to yourself, "There is a thought that says, I'm anxious." This simple shift creates distance between you and the thought. It reminds you that you are the observer, not the content of your mind. You can watch thoughts come and go without needing to chase or fight them. Practicing this awareness can transform how you experience daily life. Imagine being stuck in traffic. Your mind might start complaining, predicting you will be late, or blaming yourself for poor timing. If you obey those thoughts, your stress rises. But if you observe them without judgment, you can stay calm, realizing that getting upset will not change the situation. The same principle applies in relationships, work, and personal challenges. The ability to observe thoughts creates space for patience, clarity, and wiser decisions. Mindfulness and meditation are effective ways to strengthen this skill. In meditation, you simply sit and notice your thoughts without following them. At first, this can feel difficult because the mind wants to wander, but over time, you begin to see a clear pattern. Thoughts appear, stay briefly, and then disappear on their own. You realize you do not have to push them away or obey them. They lose their power when you stop giving them attention. This realization brings peace because you are no longer trapped by the endless stream of mental chatter. Observing instead of obeying also helps reduce emotional reactivity. Many conflicts and regrets in life come from reacting too quickly to thoughts. A person might think they disrespected me and immediately respond with anger, only to later realize they misunderstood. When you practice awareness, you create a pause between thought and action. That pause is where wisdom lives. It allows you to see clearly before choosing how to respond. Over time, this habit strengthens emotional stability and self-control. It is important to understand that observing thoughts does not mean ignoring them. Some thoughts carry useful information that can guide decisions or help solve problems. The difference is that you choose which thoughts deserve attention rather than letting them all command your focus. You become the driver instead of the passenger in your own mind. Thoughts do not arise in isolation. They are shaped by emotions, memories, and past experiences. Every person's mind is influenced by what they have lived through, the feelings they have felt, and the lessons they have learned. This means that the way we think about ourselves and the world is not always based on the present moment, but often on what has happened before. Understanding that thoughts are influenced by emotions and past experiences helps us see why we sometimes think in negative or fearful ways, even when nothing is actually wrong in the present. When we experience strong emotions such as fear, anger, or sadness, our thoughts begin to match those feelings. If you are anxious, your mind will generate thoughts that confirm your fear, like something bad will happen or I can't handle this. When you are sad, your mind might whisper, no one cares about me, or I will always feel this way. These thoughts feel real because they match the emotional state you are in, but they are not facts. They are emotional reflections. Once the emotion fades, the thoughts lose their power and often disappear completely. This shows that many thoughts are temporary products of how we feel rather than objective truths. Past experiences also shape how we think in the present. A person who has been criticized often in childhood may grow up with a constant thought of, I'm not good enough. Someone who was betrayed might carry the recurring thought, people can't be trusted. These patterns become mental habits that influence how new situations are interpreted. For example, if a friend forgets to call, a person with trust issues might assume they are being ignored, even though the truth might be something simple and innocent. The mind uses old experiences to predict new ones, but this prediction can distort reality when it is based on pain rather than fact. Understanding this connection between emotion, memory, and thought allows us to be more compassionate toward ourselves. Instead of judging ourselves for negative thinking, we can recognize that our thoughts are echoes of past wounds or emotional states. When you notice a harsh inner voice or a fearful prediction, you can pause and ask yourself where it might come from. Often, it will trace back to a past event that left a mark. Realizing this helps you respond with kindness instead of frustration because you see that the thought is not your fault. It is simply a reflection of your history. Awareness of this pattern also helps break its power. When you understand that your mind is reacting from memory, you can bring yourself back to the present. You can remind yourself that the past is over and that the present moment is different. For instance, if you think, I always fail, you can check the evidence. Is it true right now? Probably not. You might have succeeded in many things since the event that created that belief. Bringing your focus to what is real now weakens the influence of old emotions on your current thinking. Emotional awareness plays an important role in this process. When you feel strong emotions, notice how your thoughts begin to change. The more you observe this connection, the easier it becomes to see that emotions often drive thinking, not the other way around. By calming the emotion first through deep breathing, grounding, or simply waiting, you allow your thoughts to become clearer and more balanced. This helps you make decisions based on reality instead of emotional reaction. Recognizing that thoughts are shaped by emotions and past experiences teaches you to take them less personally. You begin to see that negative thoughts do not define you. They are just reflections of old stories and temporary moods. This understanding brings freedom because it allows you to stop identifying with every idea your mind produces. You can treat your thoughts as signals to understand your inner state, not as commands to believe or obey. Freedom comes from awareness. When you stop identifying with every thought that appears in your mind, you begin to experience a deeper sense of peace and clarity. Most people spend their lives caught in the constant noise of thinking. The mind creates endless stories, judgments, and worries, and without realizing it, we start to believe those thoughts completely. We let them define who we are and how we feel. But when you learn to observe your thoughts instead of following them blindly, you discover that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that notices them. This realization is the key to inner freedom. Awareness means being conscious of what is happening inside your mind without losing yourself in it. It is like sitting on the shore and watching waves rise and fall on the ocean. The waves are your thoughts, sometimes calm, sometimes stormy. But the ocean itself, the deep stillness beneath, represents your awareness. No matter how wild the surface becomes, the depths remain unchanged. When you live from that deeper awareness, you are no longer controlled by every passing emotion or idea. You can see clearly, choose wisely, and remain peaceful even in difficult situations. This kind of awareness allows you to understand that thoughts are not permanent. They come and go, and none of them define you. When you forget this truth, you start identifying with your thoughts. If you think, I am a failure, you begin to feel defeated and act in ways that reinforce that belief. But when you are aware, you can notice the thought without letting it become your identity. You might simply say to yourself, there is a thought that says I am a failure, and then let it pass. That small distance between you and the thought creates immense freedom because it shows you that you have a choice. You do not have to believe everything your mind says. Awareness also brings peace because it breaks the cycle of reaction. Most suffering comes not from the events themselves, but from how we think about them. When something unpleasant happens, the mind reacts with stories like, this is terrible, or I can't handle this. These thoughts create more pain than the situation itself. But if you stay aware, you can face what is happening directly without adding mental drama. You might still feel sadness or disappointment, but you will not drown in it. Awareness lets you experience emotions without being consumed by them. Another powerful aspect of awareness is that it connects you to the present moment. The mind often lives in the past or the future, replaying old mistakes or imagining what could go wrong. This constant mental travel steals peace from the present. Awareness brings you back to what is happening right now, the sound of your breath, the feeling of your body, the sights around you. In this state, the mind becomes quiet and a natural calmness arises. You realize that in this moment, you are safe and complete. That understanding frees you from unnecessary fear and worry. Freedom through awareness does not mean that thoughts stop appearing. The mind will always think, just as the heart will always beat. But with awareness, you stop fighting your thoughts or believing every one of them. You let them flow naturally, knowing that they cannot harm you unless you hold on to them. This acceptance makes you stronger, not weaker. You can face challenges with a clear mind and respond with wisdom instead of panic. Over time, living with awareness transforms how you experience yourself and the world. You begin to act more consciously, speak more kindly, and make choices based on understanding rather than impulse. You discover that happiness does not depend on controlling your thoughts, but on your relationship with them. When you see thoughts for what they truly are, temporary movements of the mind, you find a lasting peace that does not depend on circumstances. That peace is the essence of true freedom. It comes not from changing your life on the outside, but from awakening to the awareness within you that has always been free.